Today, December 2nd, 2025, the United States Supreme Court delivered a unanimous 9-0 decision upholding the federal government's authority to require universal background checks for all firearm sales, including private transactions. This landmark ruling closes the so-called private sale loophole, marking a pivotal shift in the nation's approach to gun ownership. For the first time, all 9 justices, across the ideological spectrum, found common ground on a major Second Amendment issue. The decision provides law enforcement with a new tool to keep guns from those legally barred from owning them, while introducing new regulations for private gun owners. The ruling redraws the political battle lines and sparks a national conversation about balancing individual rights with public safety. Tonight we'll break down how this decision came to be, what it means for Americans, and why it's being called a turning point in the country's gun debate. We'll examine the legal journey, the justices' reasoning, and the immediate impact on communities nationwide. The Supreme Court has spoken with a single, clear voice. Now, the nation must decide what comes next. The aftershocks of this decision are only beginning to be felt. To grasp the weight of today's decision, let's look back at the evolution of American gun laws. The Second Amendment, ratified in 1791, originally focused on militias, with few federal restrictions for over a century. The National Firearms Act of 1934 and the Gun Control Act of 1968 marked the first major federal regulations, targeting dangerous weapons and restricting sales to certain individuals. However, these laws mainly applied to licensed dealers, leaving private sales largely unregulated, a gap known as the gun show loophole. The Brady Act of 1993 introduced federal background checks for dealer sales, but again, private transactions were exempt. This omission fueled decades of debate and legal challenges. In 2008, District of Columbia versus Heller affirmed an individual's right to own firearms, but also allowed for conditions and qualifications on sales. That language set the stage for today's Supreme Court test. Just how far can those conditions go? The answer, delivered today, closes a chapter on a long-standing legal gray area. The private sale loophole is no more. The case, United States versus Miller II now become por debatte now. Challenged the Safer Communities Act's requirement for universal background checks, including private sales. Gun rights groups and a Texas collector argued the law placed an unconstitutional burden on private citizens. Lower courts were split out. A Texas judge blocked the law, but the Fifth Circuit reversed, citing Supreme Court precedent that allows reasonable conditions on gun sales. The Department of Justice argued that a uniform standard was essential for public safety, as the loophole undermined the entire background check system. The Supreme Court took up the case to resolve the split and clarify the Second Amendment's limits in the modern era. Today's unanimous decision affirms that universal background checks are a constitutional, reasonable regulation. The ruling sets a clear national standard. The legal landscape for gun ownership in America has changed permanently. At 10 a.m., the Supreme Court chamber was packed as Chief Justice John Roberts delivered the opinion himself, a sign of the case's gravity. Roberts acknowledged the Second Amendment's deep roots, but emphasized the government's duty to protect public safety. He traced the history of gun regulation, noting that the right to bear arms has never been absolute. The key question: is a universal background check a reasonable constitutional regulation? The court found the burden on private sellers minimal, comparable to other routine regulations like driver's licenses. The process, they ruled, is a procedural safeguard, not an infringement on core rights. When Roberts announced the 9-0 vote, the courtroom was stunned. No dissents, no concurrences, just a single unified decision. Every justice, regardless of ideology, agreed. Universal background checks are consistent with the Second Amendment. The gavel fell, and the rules of gun ownership in America were forever altered. The decision's clarity and unity send a powerful message to lawmakers and citizens alike. The Supreme Court has spoken with one voice. The debate now shifts from the courts to the people. The next chapter begins. Chief Justice Roberts' opinion was both clear and direct. The Second Amendment protects an individual's right to keep and bear arms. It does not, however, guarantee a right to acquire arms by any means whatsoever, without reasonable and even-handed regulation. The court acknowledged that while instant digital background checks didn't exist in the 18th century, the principle of keeping guns from dangerous individuals is deeply rooted in American tradition. Universal background checks, they argued, are a modern tool for a timeless goal: public safety. The justices dismissed claims that the process was too burdensome, calling it a minimal inconvenience compared to the public interest at stake. To characterize this procedural step as an infringement, the opinion stated, is to mistake a small toll booth for a complete blockade on the road to gun ownership. The court's holding was narrow but clear. Requiring background checks for all sales is constitutional. The decision does not endorse other regulations or diminish core Second Amendment protections. Instead, it affirms that Congress can enact common-sense measures to ensure responsible gun ownership. The ruling provides a constitutional green light for universal background checks. The broader gun debate will continue, but on new legal ground. In Washington, the 9-0 decision has upended the political landscape. President Thompson called it a monumental victory for public safety, while Democrats see it as a mandate to strengthen enforcement. Hardline gun rights advocates are frustrated, but the unanimity makes it difficult to attack the court. Republican leaders are shifting focus to implementation, promising oversight to prevent a national gun registry and minimize bureaucracy for legal gun owners. The ruling is already shaping the upcoming midterm elections, giving Democrats a major policy win and forcing Republicans to recalibrate their message. The decision may also create new political space for candidates who support both the Second Amendment and common-sense safety measures. Lobbying groups on both sides are adjusting strategies. Gun control advocates feel emboldened, while gun rights groups pivot to state-level fights and enforcement issues. The political ground has shifted, and every lawmaker knows it. The debate is no longer about whether background checks are constitutional, but how they'll be implemented. Washington is on notice. The rules have changed. The Supreme Court's decision will reshape how Americans buy and sell firearms. All private sales now require a licensed dealer, a background check, and a fee, ending the era of informal handshake deals. Federally licensed dealers stand to benefit from new business, while gun shows and online platforms may see a decline in private sales. The stock market has already reacted, with gun manufacturers dipping and retail chains seeing a modest bump. Socially, the ruling is a milestone for communities affected by gun violence, offering hope for safer neighborhoods. Community leaders praise the decision, while some rural and Second Amendment supporters see it as government overreach. The challenge ahead: bridging the cultural divide between public safety advocates and those who view the new law as an erosion of tradition. The law's success will depend on effective, respectful implementation. America's gun culture is changing, one transaction at a time. The nation must find common ground as it adapts to this new reality. Legal experts call the Miller-Skew decision a thunderclap. Its unanimous nature sends a clear signal. The constitutionality of universal background checks is settled law. The court interpreted tradition as enduring principles, not a static list of 18th-century practices. Keeping guns from dangerous people is an old idea. Background checks are the modern way to do it. The ruling rebalances the Second Amendment, reaffirming both individual rights and the government's role in public safety. Lawmakers now have a clear, constitutionally sound path to enact safety regulations. The debate shifts from the courts to legislatures. The question is no longer if, but how, universal background checks will be implemented. The decision sets a precedent for future gun laws, favoring practical, evidence-based measures. It's a true legal game changer. Today's Supreme Court decision is a turning point for America. By affirming universal background checks, the court has closed one chapter and opened another in the gun debate. Implementation will require careful planning and cooperation between federal, state, and local agencies. The 9-0 ruling offers a rare chance to move beyond entrenched positions and focus on building safer communities together. The real test will be in the lives saved and the trust built across communities. This is a moment for leadership and dialogue, from politicians, law enforcement, gun owners, and citizens alike. The Supreme Court has provided the legal framework. Now it's up to the American people to shape the future. The conversation is just beginning. What happens next is in our hands.